Hey everyone, this is Catalin, and I have a special guest today, Tom Wheelwright from Wealthability, and we're here, he and Robert Kiyosaki and a couple of other very interesting advisors. They're here today at a conference in Romania to teach the Romanian people about financial education, so thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
And we're gonna have a little chat about a very sexy topic, which is tax, accounting, and all these other things. So, Tom, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's
great being here.
To speak with us.
Romania is beautiful.
Yeah.
Love the people. Very excited. I actually get to spend a week on vacation here, so I'm looking forward to it. Yes.
Did you get any time to visit anything, or like right
I'm going to
now?
do that. I'm going to do that next week. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to give you some recommendations after the
right.
interview then.
You got it.
So, give me a little bit of an intro, and for the people listening, what do you do? What's your work about? And what's the thing with the taxes?
So my background, I have a degree in accounting and a master's degree in tax, and I taught for 14 years in the Graduate School of Business at Arizona State University. I was the tax advisor for a Fortune 500 company. I was with Ernst Young, one of the largest accounting firm in the world, for 7 years. Big Four now.
Big Four.
We call them the Final Four. And then I have been starting and building CPA firms all over the world for the last 25 years.
That's amazing.
So, and my background, I'm a tax guy. I'm a total nerd, okay, tax nerd. And what has been fascinating to me is that most people are scared to death of taxes. I mean, they're scared of the government's going to come after me. This is, I've got to pay it. This is horrible. And they go, you know what, there's nothing I can do about it. And there's a lot you can do about it. I mean, the tax law fundamentally is a series of incentives. And that's what it is. If you think about it, okay, well, why do companies pay less tax than individuals? I mean, as an individual in Romania, you're paying 45% tax, right? And a company's paying 16%. Why is that? Well, that's a government incentive to companies to hire employees, to build business, to build the economy. That's all that difference in tax rate is. They're saying, well, we're not going to incentivize the employees because they only produce a little bit. We're going to incentivize the businesses who produce a lot of employees. And that's an example of an incentive. Another one, in business, do you know if you do research and development in Romania, you don't get to deduct 100% of your costs. You get to deduct 150% of your costs.
So that's a great incentive right there.
It's a great incentive. And in fact, if your whole business is about research and development, for the first 10 years in Romania, you're not taxed at all. So there's all sorts of incentives, and people always ask me, well, it's different in Romania than it is in the US. The details are different, but the purpose of the tax law and the incentives are very, very similar from country to country. People who work for money, who are employees, like Robert Kiyosaki would say, people who work for money, employees, and self-employed people, like attorneys and accountants, pay really high taxes. People who build big businesses, and do investing, like real estate investing and other type of investing, they pay very low taxes. And that's just because the government wants them to do those things, and so the government rewards them. It's just a reward system, that's all. It's very simple.
So, and by the way, our audience is, there's a lot of people in Romania, but there's a lot of people listening from all over the world. So we're going to speak a little bit about Romania and kind of like how that's different and how people can do it. But I also love to touch on the other ones as well. So let's say I'm 20 right now, and I have a small business. So I have a startup, and maybe I have some investors, but like whatever, that doesn't matter. What do I need to do? Where can I start so I can actually start educating myself? Or when is the right time to actually get the right advisors? Because especially when you're talking about the big four companies, people think they can't afford it.
Right.
So they get their uncle or somebody that has no idea what they're doing most of the times. I'm not saying a lot of
right.
And they're losing a lot of weight in that. So what would you say if I'm starting my own business right now, or if I'm very young and starting out, what would you say would be some next steps I could take to either educate myself or to pay attention that I should look at?
Well, first of all, I'd read all of the Rich Dad books.
Okay.
I really would. My book is Tax-Free Wealth, and it's an international book on how to think about taxes, and there are books on real estate, and there are books on the stock market, and there are books on entrepreneurship. We have a book, More Important Than Money, which was written by all of the Rich Dad advisors and Robert and Kim Kiyosaki, which is about building your team. And I actually think that's after Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Well, my book, of course. Yeah. But I think that's the most important book in the whole series.
So More Important Than Money.
More Important Than Money is about building your team. And when you're a young entrepreneur, you know, the most important thing is to not think you have to do it yourself. Because you can't. You can't know it all. You don't know everything about tax, and I don't know everything about real estate. You know, so I go to real estate experts I have real estate people on my team to do help me with my real estate, but I'm the tax expert, helps Robert with his taxes. So it's building that team and really looking at it that business is really a team sport. Most important thing. Now, as far as resources also, I mean, we have at wealthability.com, we have an enormous amount of free resources. We have educational resources, podcasts, newsletters. I mean, there's all sorts of things available. So, you know, don't hire your uncle, please. Don't hire your uncle.
How can I hire somebody better, though?
Well, so in my book, Tax-Free Wealth, Chapter 23 actually teaches you how to find the right advisors. So, you know, you have to learn how to find the right advisors. And to me, the most important thing an advisor can do is ask good questions. You know, if you ask your advisor, I get all the time, I get this question. So what questions should I ask somebody when I'm interviewing them?
Interesting.
And I always say, you know what, it doesn't matter what you ask them because you're not going to know if they give you a good answer or not. But if they ask you good questions, you're going to know right away that they're good questions. You know when you see a good question, don't you? You're an interviewer. You know what a good question is.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, but I get what you mean because it's, yeah, I get it. So
because here's the thing. If you want to change your tax, you have to change your facts. That's it. You want to change your tax, you have to change your facts. Well, so your advisor needs to understand what your facts are, what your situation is. So my job is to help you know, okay, well, if you're here and you want to go here, what do you have to do in order to do it without paying a lot of taxes? Right? That's my job. Well, I have to ask the right questions of you to know what you need to change to make sure that you get to where you want to go.
Do you think we could take, because something I noticed with people that do not know these things, and most of the people that are listening have really no idea where to approach it and what's inside really. Do you think we could have a solid example and think of here's like 3 things you can do, but you probably didn't know you could do that, especially something like what you said right now with the research and development, which is specific to Romania, I'm guessing, because of the incentive.
Actually, all countries have research and development tax incentives, all of them. In Singapore, it's 400%.
Wow, and Singapore has a great economy.
By the way, these are all better tax incentives than the research and development incentives in the U.S. The U.S. has very small research and development incentives. But let me give you another one. So, the most obvious one is, are you taxed as an individual or are you taxed as a company? I mean, in Romania, it's way less if you're taxed as a company. So why aren't you setting up your company properly? So how you set up your business is number one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what country you're in. How you set up your business is number one, okay? And then realize that there are anything that you do in your business that you document that is actually you're intending to spend the money to make money is deductible from your taxes. So what you're trying to do is, remember, we're taxed in business, and as an individual in Romania, you're taxed on your gross income.
Yes.
Right? As a business, you're taxed on your net income. So that means you take your income minus all of your expenses, and then you're taxed on what's left over. So that's where business gets a huge benefit over an individual, right? Gross versus net. Well, think about all of those things that you spend money on, that if you changed some of your facts, maybe they could become business expenses. I'll give you an example. Romania travel can be deductible if it's a business expense. Seminars, like the one we're doing here this weekend, can be deductible if they're business, but not if they're as an individual, but as a business. Automobiles, this is a fascinating one in Romania. If you use your car less than 100% for business, then you only get to deduct 50% of it in your business, okay? So if you use it 90%, you only get to deduct 50%. So how do you use it 100%? Especially when you're driving to the office every day, and if you're driving that car to the office, that's not business, that's personal. So what you have to do is have an office in your house. Because that makes then, when you drive from your home office to your business office, now that's business to business. So it's those types of things, and they're true in every country.
Yeah.
You know, and people think, oh, you can't do that here, right? We were talking about earlier is that's always, and I get that everywhere I go. It doesn't matter if I'm in Russia or Australia or frankly Texas. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get the same thing. Somebody's going to say, yeah, that's great. You can do that where you are, but you can't do that here. Well, no, what really you're saying is you can't do that here. And you can't if you don't understand how the tax law works where you live. And if you don't understand that the reality is that you're a partner with the government. You're in partnership. Look at your wage statement every single time. Yeah. The government's taking a portion of those wages, right?
That's a partnership.
That's a partnership. That's what a partnership is.
Not always a pleasant one, but it's a partnership.
Exactly. So why don't you become a better partner? If you do those things the government wants you to do, business, investing, and make money a different way. If you do it the way the government wants you to do it, and you do it what the government wants you to do, they'll say, look, we'll allow you to pay less tax if you do it our way. If you want to do it your way, great, pay 45%. If you want to do it the government way, we'll let you pay 16%, 10%, even lower than that. I mean, there are people, I guarantee you, there are people in Romania and in every country that are legally paying zero tax. Legally. Jeff Bezos, Amazon, zero tax. Worldwide. Okay, he doesn't just have.
And we're not going to go into the conversation of how mad people are at that for no reason, but it's incredible.
But they're mad at it because they don't understand. See, here's the thing: the tax law's fair. Okay, anybody could do what Jeff Bezos does on a smaller scale. They just don't know what to do, and they have in this mindset. Well, you can't do that. Well, if that's your mindset, if you're in this mindset, you're still in the communist mindset, right?
Yeah.
And you go, oh, well, we have to follow the rules, but you don't know that there's two sets of rules. There's rules for wage earners and there's rules for business owners. Well, the government, by law, they have to allow everybody to use those rules. You just don't know that there's a whole nother set of rules. So you think, well, I'm following the rules. Well, you are, but why don't you follow the other rules? That's all.
Business rules.
Just follow the business rules.
That's incredible. So if I'm a small business owner, should I look to learn these? Well, first we need the awareness that there's more to it than you know, because
number one.
You don't know what you don't know. So
That's
the
right.
things that you're talking about, obviously people do not know that they don't know the same way they cannot ask the right questions to people that they're interviewing. Should I look into learning these things? Should I look for the fastest way to hire somebody that's competent? Should I have both?
I think you have to learn them.
Okay.
You don't need to learn the details.
Yeah.
You do not need to, there's hundreds of thousands of pages of tax law.
Yeah.
You don't need to learn, that's my job, right? You don't need to learn all those things. But you do have to have a fundamental understanding. That's why I did my book, Tax-Free Wealth, because you have to have a fundamental understanding of how the tax law works. Because what'll happen is you have to sit down with that tax advisor and say, look, I need you to read this book and let me know what you think. That's actually the easiest way to make sure that they get it. Because if they read the book, I've never had a tax advisor say, no, you can't do that, ever, when they read my book.
Right.
Okay? So I know I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years. They're fundamentally sound, right? I'm not worried about that. So what you do is you go, look, you read the book, have the tax advisor read the book. So one of two things will happen. They'll either say, I don't need to read that book. I know all this stuff. Well, why would you want a tax advisor who's not willing to learn something new? The law changes every day. So you don't want that person. So that's a good test. It's a litmus test, right?
Right.
Whereas if they go, okay, and then they'll come back and say, yeah, we can do that. Great. Hire them.
Interesting. So when you're looking at, and I'll switch gears a little bit. When you're looking at, for example, we've been in the longest, and I've asked Robert about this, and he had a fascinating insight. When you're looking at, for example, we had the longest growing market, let's say, without a crash or a correction, expansion in a long time. What do you think would be, because there should be theoretically, to my limited knowledge, some correction happening, smaller or bigger. Sure. But what do you think are some best practices that people should take in those periods of times, in that period of time, in order to take advantage of the most that they can of the situation, and how they should look at it?
Get educated.
Perfect.
You just got to get educated, because when you make the most money when the market goes down, because you can actually sell high and then buy low. It's called shorting a stock or shorting the market. So if you're looking at the stock market, what you want to look at is, wow. So my wife's father was a stock trader, and in 1987 there was a big stock market crash, and she said he came home that day, and he goes, "I have never made so much money in one day." I mean, completely transformed his life. He made so much money on the day the market crashed.
In that day?
In that day, he made an enormous amount of money because he anticipated it. He knew what was going to happen. He was watching it. He was educated. He learned how. He was a Marine Corps fighter pilot before he became a stock trader.
That's similar to Robert's story.
It is, actually. Yeah. But he flew the F-4s. He flew the planes.
Different.
He flew the bombers, right? The fast planes.
Yeah.
What happened is that he just got educated afterwards. He learned it himself. He got educated, and then he was prepared for the market crash, right? So, but the thing is that, remember that the last time we had a market crash, 2008, it started with real estate, but the stock market was heavily affected. So let's say this next one is a stock market crash. That doesn't mean real estate won't be affected. It will, okay, because it has ripple effects worldwide. So it doesn't matter if you're in, and it had business ripple effects. I mean, we had a lot of our clients went out of business.
Yeah.
So that affects our business, right? So you have to be prepared for that crash, and the only way to get prepared is to actually not get caught up in the hype about how good this market is, and this time's going to be different. Yeah, right. This time's going to be different, really? I mean, what fantasy are you living in, right? The markets always go up and markets always come down. You just have to be prepared for it, because then you can actually make money fast. You can actually make more money when it comes down because you're ready for it. And literally you make millions of dollars, millions of euros if you're prepared for it. Yeah,
incredible. And for example, I have like 2-3 more questions. I'm going to let you go, and people should definitely read your book as one of the ways. So they could either hire somebody that's very competent, and need to start educating themselves by reading your book, and there's also other resources. Yeah. So what do you think, because a lot of young people, and our core audience is a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are into companies, executives or problem solvers working in companies between 16 and 35, around that age, and they're very confused, and a lot of them are in student debt.
Right.
What for the people that are not yet in student debt, and for the people that are in, do you think there's ways to get around that? For the people that are not in, how would you think about that? If you were, let's say, 17 right now, would you even consider it as an option to pay $150,000? Well, in Romania, it's cheaper. It's like $1,000, $2,000 a year, so it's not that big of a deal. But in the US, in most countries, Germany, France, UK, it's very expensive. So how would you go about making that decision and getting out of it if you're in there?
You have to decide what you want from it.
Yeah.
If you're going to go into a profession like doctor, lawyer, accountant, you have to get that schooling. You do. So if I'd had to do that, now what I did was I got scholarships. So I worked really hard to get those scholarships. I did not pay a dime for school, okay? Not one dime. Not my own money, not my parents' money. The school paid for it, okay? They even paid for my books, they paid for my housing, they paid for everything.
Yeah.
But that's because I worked hard when I was young, and I got really good grades, and I was, and I deserved those scholarships, and I was eligible for those scholarships. So one way is to let somebody else, really the goal is have somebody else pay for it, right? That's the goal. If you're going to go into a profession though, and you have to decide, is it a good return on my investment to do the school? On the other side, if it's a general education, you have to decide, is it worth that money to me to get that general education? Or am I really doing it to get a job, then why am I doing it? So you really have to look at your motivation for going to school.
Okay.
I think if it's worth it to you, great. But I'm an accountant, so I'm always going to analyze the bottom line. Is it worth it to have that debt and spend that money? If it's going to create more money for me, if it's going to be, even if it's just I want the general education, or even if, it's worth it just to party for 4 years, right?
But you have to be aware you're making that
but
decision.
But you need to make the decision
Okay.
up front, right? Go, okay, I know what I'm getting into. I'm planning for this. I'm good. Here's how I'm going to deal with it. But I would be looking, it's really hard when you're 17 to be looking long term, but you got to start looking a little longer term and going, look, I can't just go out and borrow all this money because some people are paying it back 30 years later.
Yeah, and you can get out of it.
You can't get out of it. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So, okay. So that's one thing, and because I know a lot of people have asked me about. I have that the first question people have in mind is like, oh, I have 120,000 in debt. What do I do? I get all these things, but I cannot even start a business because I have all these debt,
Right.
and I feel kind of gated in a box. So, okay. The next thing that I think would be interesting, and we talked about this before we started the interview, is what do you think, from your point of view as an accountant, about all these new technologies like the blockchain and cryptocurrencies? How can you? Because a lot of people look at them and they might seem interesting, but they don't want to get into them because they seem dirty, and they were used for a lot of different reasons. So, what's your point of view when you look at these exponential technologies and how they can be used?
It's a matter of getting educated.
Yeah,
it really is. Cryptocurrency is just it's just another currency. That's
Yeah.
all it is. And the blockchain, which is the underlying of cryptocurrency. Now, blockchain is very interesting to me because blockchain is just a method of accounting. It's just accounting. Okay, all blockchain does is every single transaction gets audited by every other transaction. So it's a closed system, so that it means that every transaction you can be pretty much assured is okay. And that's why you can do cryptocurrency, because
yeah.
it's very hard to cheat on the currency. You can't get into the currency. You can't change the currency
decentralized, yeah.
because it's a closed loop system, right? It's a closed system. So it's like a vacuum, right? It's a closed loop system. So but blockchain is going to have a huge impact on the world. That technology itself will have a huge impact, because if you can imagine, like my former company, Ernst & Young, they expect within the next few years that they will be able to lay off 80% of their auditors.
They made that statement?
Well,
not
so publicly.
Okay, because that would have been really alarming to the 80%.
I just happen to know this, that
Okay.
they're going to reduce their audit staff by 80% because they're going to be able to use blockchain technology to do their auditing for them.
So the majority of that 80% decrease in employment is because of blockchain technology? Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how that, what specifically does that mean?
Well, look,
how does that work?
What does an auditor do? An auditor verifies a transaction. That's all an auditor does, is goes and verifies transactions. If the transactions verify themselves, why do you need an auditor?
End of story. Wow, that's incredible. So 80%. And what's the rest of 20% going to do? What's the valuable?
They have to do the consulting. So my profession is going to change drastically over the next 10 years, because those people who are still doing things by hand and doing tax returns and doing bookkeeping and doing all that kind of stuff, they're going to be out of business. They're just going to be out of business. It's all going to be automated. You have a combination of blockchain and artificial intelligence, AI, and those two together are going to work together to eliminate a lot of those production type jobs. Okay? What's going to be always going to be important, though, is interpreting that information, because AI will eventually catch up somewhat there, and it does already. We see it in the medical professions, right? They're already doing radiology with
better accuracy
with
than a
better
doctor.
accuracy than a doctor.
Yeah.
But some of that's visual, right? Some of that's because the doctor has physical eyes, right? But when it comes to, for example, finance, being able to look at, okay, how does this piece fit over with this piece? That's a really tough thing for AI to do. Okay, it's really tough to make that connection because they're not naturally connected. So in my world, in the tax world, when I was just telling you that you have your automobile deduction may be affected by your home office, that's not a connection very many people make. Okay, that it's not a natural connection. So what we need to do in the finance professions is to actually become a little more right-brained and really think about how can we better serve our clients and give them better results analyzing information rather than doing what a computer can do.
Interesting. So that's very scary for people that work at Ernst & Young. And well, all the major...
all the big firms. They're all doing it. They're all doing it.
Yeah, because it's...
Of course. Well, but the whole world's going to do it. I mean, the small firms have the same issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the increasing profitability is just incredible with that.
Yeah, think about it.
Yeah. Incredible.
But what it does is it releases the 80% to do something that's more valuable. Right? They can actually make more money. They can actually do other things. You know, people always tell me, well, what if they made the tax law so simple, which will never happen. But let's say you made it so simple that you weren't needed. I'm going, great, I'd do something else, something more valuable to society. So the great thing about being an entrepreneur is it doesn't matter. You can always do something else. I mean, right now, our next big project, my company, is in technology because we think we can actually change the way people invest.
And what's that about? The project that you're talking about.
So
if you can talk about it.
I can tell you a little bit about it. But the things that require right now a financial advisor or a tax advisor, we think we can get a computer system to do 80% of it. We think we can. And we're pretty confident that we can. And so what that means is that it just makes the decisions a lot easier. You know, but then you still have to take the time. The problem most people have is they don't want to be involved. They don't want to be bothered. So it's not going to affect most people, right? It's just like most people will not make money when the market comes down. They'll lose money. Why? Because they can't be bothered for education. They can't be bothered to learn it, right? But if you actually learn this and you go, oh, I'm willing to be involved in my financial future. I'm willing to take responsibility for it. Then it's a whole different story. Then all this technology and you know, whether we come out with it or somebody else comes out with it, this is going to happen. Everything that we're seeing, I mean, the blockchain, the auditing, the consulting done by artificial intelligence, it's all going to happen whether we want it to or not. Somebody's going to do it.
Yeah.
So the question is, okay, so what do we have to do to be prepared for that? And what do we do to take advantage of it? Because there's so many opportunities that we've never had before.
Interesting. So to wrap up, and I'd love for people to get your book, and we're going to have links for people everywhere to get it, and your website as well. So if you're not educated in this, start getting educated, read our books. There's also other resources out there. Just the goal would be to get educated in a way. Then whenever you can, get somebody that's competent. And that's well, I know I'm getting out of that myself with the businesses I'm running and everything else. I think I need to know that. And I think I shouldn't be able to know it. And whenever I make a decision, I'm trying to look for price in that. And that's not how it goes. You need to get the best quality of people.
The question is it an expense or an investment or an asset? So if the money that you're spending is an expense, you want to keep it down as low as possible. In other words, let's say you're having somebody prepare your tax return and you don't see any value in that other than it's a requirement for the government. You want that expense as low as possible, right? As long as it's accurate, you want as low as possible. On the other hand, if you take money and you put it with an advisor and they can actually lower your taxes by 2 or 3 times as much as what you're paying them, and let's say you paid them 10,000 euro and they lowered your taxes for 10,000 euro, they could lower your taxes 15,000 euro a year. Wouldn't you want to give them $20,000 so you could lower it by $30,000 a year? That's what you'd want to do. If you have a good investment, you want to make more of that investment. But if you have an expense, you want to reduce the expense. So that's the difference in the thought process.
I love that. I love that. And we'll end with that. That's amazing. That's actually great. So thank you so much for your time.
You bet.
Appreciate it. And people can go and check out your book and everything. And good luck at your conference today.
Thank you
so
very much.